fitness and telehealth type things. So in a nutshell, that's what the three provisions in the bill are. And then we do also have language coming up that provides that this would be taken out of the CARES Act. With that, Mr. Chair, I could stand for questions.
Well, Representative Eklund, do you want to move the next amendment then?
I would, yes, Mr. Chair, I would like to move the A12 amendment, and as happened in the previous one, nonpartisan staff found some problems with the A12 amendment, technical problems, and Mr. Sullivan, I believe, can address those. So with that, I'll move the A12 amendment and defer to Mr. Sullivan.
Mr. Sullivan?
Mr. Chair and members, this is Colby Sullivan from House Research. Because members adopted Representative Eklund's, or incorporated Representative Eklund's change to the A10, now the A12 needs a small change as well. That's, Representative Eklund can incorporate the change to delete lines 3 to 5 because the underlying language no longer exists in the A10.
Okay, the motion is before us. Any discussion? Seeing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Representative Dabney, you have an amendment.
Apologies, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the A11 amendment.
Okay, the motion is before us. Would you care to explain your amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The A11 amendment relates to the distance learning period that schools across the state are in. Students and families, many students and families across the state are having difficulty accessing online educational opportunities, lessons, and the like. This amendment increases the funding in the bill for school districts and charter schools from $8 million to $15 million, and directs the commissioner to distribute that funding, directs schools to report their expenses so that we as the legislature have a record of what schools have been spending to connect their students with online learning, and then directs the commissioner to distribute the money based on those expenses or prorated if the $15 million is found to be insufficient.
Okay, the motion is before us. Representative Eklund, any comments? Representative Eklund?
I apologize, Mr. Chair. My kids once told me I wasn't slow enough for a short phone, that might be right. But no, I appreciate the time, and I think we've shown that we need more funding for broadband, and this is a small way that we can maybe accommodate the state for if or when we have something like this happen in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members.
Okay, the motion is before us. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, I'm trying to use the raising my hand feature of this, so I'm not interrupted. You know, so.
Yeah, Representative Garofalo, it's down in the lower left-hand corner. You were using it before. I don't know what changed, but anyway, I do recognize your voice. So go ahead, Representative Garofalo.
Okay, I don't want to be rude and interrupt whenever I want to talk. Just generally, I'm getting sick of hearing my voice. Representative Dabney, when you refer to the commissioner in section 1 of the bill, of the amendment, it references the commissioner of education, but these grant programs are administered in a different department. Will this give the commissioner of education the oversight over this, or is the decider going to be where it's administered from?
Representative, is that directed at Representative Dabney?
Yes, sir.
Representative Dabney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Garofalo, this would be operated through the Department of Education. It mimics the underlying bill, or at this point, underlying amendment.
And so, Mr. Chairman, neither nonpartisan staff or Representative Dabney or Representative Eklund can address this. So, explain the money path for me I understand the existing program, but explain to me the money path of where the money comes in and where it goes out if this amendment were adopted.
You mentioned several people. Shall we start?
Whoever wants to answer the question.
Okay. Well, I'll ask Representative Eklund. Do you have any thoughts on that, or should we go to staff?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I had that same question when Senator Western and I started talking about this, and I was assured that the Department of Education had a grant program set up that they could administer this, because my original thought is to run it all through deed. But other than that, I would like staff to answer the rest of the question, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Would that be Mr. Marks or Mr. Sullivan, or maybe Mr. Marks, Mr. Chair? Okay, Mr. Mark.
Mr. Chair, this is Bill Marks. I'm not real familiar with this language. I don't know if Mr. Sullivan or if Mr. Strom is on.
Mr. Chair and members, this is Colby. And I apologize, my connection dropped and I'm reconnecting, but I believe the question was, where would the funding come from for these distance learning grants? And as amended with the A12 amendment, the distance learning money, as with the other programs discussed during today's meeting, would be funded from the general fund unless the Commissioner of Management and Budget determines that the money is eligible for Federal CARES Act funding, and in that case, that's where the funding would come from.
Representative Garofalo, did you want to restate your question, or?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and Mr. Sullivan, and again, if you're the wrong person to ask this question, please, by all means, just feel free to tell me that you don't know, because I think we're all learning here. So I understand that aspect of it, but what this amendment is doing, on the bottom of the amendment, when we're increasing from 8 to 15 million, there's interactions involved with the Office of Broadband, where it's currently funded in deed. I'm trying to figure out how those two overlap. This is a new section of law.
Mr. Sullivan.
I'm sorry. So Mr. Sullivan, so the money that's coming in, we're saying track 1 is exclusively if we get the federal CARES funding, that this money flows directly to the Department of Education. Track 2 is if it's not eligible for CARES funding, then it comes from the general fund via deed, then to education. Is that correct?
Mr. Sullivan?
Mr. Chair and members and Representative Garofalo, that is how I read the A10 amendment, which amendment that members are currently considering would increase that $8 million on line 4.19 of the A10. And that language does say that the money is appropriated to deed for transfer to the Commissioner of Education for emergency distance learning grants.
So in a sense, deed becomes a pass-through agency, then, is what my take on that is. Is that correct, Mr. Sullivan?
Mr. Chair and members, I believe that is correct.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, so with regards to that scenario B we outlined where it's not CARES funding eligible, we have funds that are currently we have general fund appropriations that are currently in that fund. Do those funds flow to the school, to this new section of law, or is there an additional appropriation to cover that?
Mr. Sullivan?
Mr. Chair and members, I don't know if Mr. Marks has thoughts on that. I'm trying to follow the flow of money too. Let's see, I guess I don't know. Mr. Marks may have thoughts.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, on this, it would be, in either case, the flow of the money is basically the same. It goes to deed for transfer to Department of Education. It's going to be federal money. It's going to be general fund money is the first appropriation. However, if the Commissioner of MMB determines it is CARES eligible than it would be from the Federal CARES Act.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Marks, so is it fair to say once before we have this bill on the floor, I'm assuming that we're going to have an updated research summary that will cover these items. Is that fair?
Mr. Chair, yes.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, so perhaps it would probably just be in interest of the uniqueness of the situation, it'd probably just be best if we review that. Once we vote on it and pass it, then we'll read about it later to know what it is.
Okay. You, Representative Garofalo. Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, again, we have to unmute. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carried. We now have an amendment by Representative Krisha to the A10. Representative Krisha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair and members, I'll be honest, I was really trying to help. I actually had offered this amendment and Representative Eklund to get us money to the BIA schools as well as some other non-public schools that would be eligible from the CARES Act. And what Commissioner DeVos has said would help. I was trying to get to some areas of need. I think the previous amendment didn't quite get to areas of need. It could have just been allocated out anywhere. Whereas with the broadband program, we go to unserved areas. So what this amendment would have done would have increased the allocation to $15 million for the schools and put it in, and we changed how it's funded. So it could have been directed to areas of need and those that need it the most, as well as the telemedicine. And then I actually had deleted the section on funding the border-to-border broadband because there's already funding there. And in fact, the problem we're going to have, members, is the limited staff indeed may not be able to get that funding out fast enough, and that's not even going to happen until next year. I will be honest, since the beginning of this committee, I am now seeing the confusion, and we were making amendments all the way up to 9 o'clock last night, and now I'm hearing we don't even really know how these things are going to be funded. I have no confidence that my amendment would even go on to a bill that actually is correctly put together. And frankly, I'm disappointed. I haven't had a chance to actually talk to some of the advocates, to talk to the BIA schools, to talk to them about the possibility of this coming into them, gain their support, because everything, and Representative Garofalo, you're right, we've been trying to be accommodating, Mr. Chair. I understand how difficult these are, but that's not an excuse, in my opinion, for not putting it together and doing it right. The broadband program is so important, something near and dear that I've worked on for a long time. My fear is we're going to get this wrong today. We've seen testimony from another member on this committee about how when we get it wrong in special sessions, we get spelling mistakes. We're getting it wrong today on policy and funding. We don't even know if the money is going to come from the right spot. I'm sure, I understand, and I apologize to the staff because I know how hard they've been working, and I know how hard our staff has been working lately. But we as members should be doing better on this. And I'm going to withdraw my amendment. I'm going to back away. I'm going to let you fix your bill and try to get it correct on the House floor. But right now, I have no confidence this amendment would go on to something that could be effectively administered by anybody with the right policy. And so with that, Mr. Chair, I will pull my amendment.
Okay, and withdrawn. Any further discussion on the A10 amendment as amended? Okay, seeing none. Representative Eklund, any comments before we vote?
Nothing further, Mr. Chair.
Okay, with that, all those in favor of the A10 amendment as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carried. Representative Eklund?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you want me to?
This would be an amendment where you move to.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the language contained in the A10 amendment as amended be included as Article 2 of the COVID-19 Economic Security Act.
Okay, that motion is before us. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, this is the language that matches the section. This is the same language as was in Section 5 of the Hausman Amendment.
This is the language that this wouldn't deal with the Hausman language. This deals with the language that we just were adopting to create an article.
My apologies, Mr. Chairman. What I meant was that Representative Hausman moved an amendment earlier that gave the Commissioner of Management and Budget, they directed them to see if it determined if the CARES funding is eligible. Is this the broadband version of that amendment?
Yeah, we're including that language in all of the amendment, or on all of the sections.
Right, and Mr. Chairman, is that the amendment that we're on right now?
This is the amendment to put the A10 amendment as amended into the Economic Security Act. This is what you and I talked about last night now, where we're creating the bill that will have all of the articles that we've been discussing today included in a single bill. The Hausman bill was reported out separately and so on. So we're on a dual track. We have reported some of the bills out separately, and then we're going to have the this bill. I'm trying to avoid the word omnibus. Bill with several articles reported out as the separate vehicle as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We're trying to be prepared for future discussions with the Senate, quite frankly. So it's yet to be determined what the final vehicles will be on the floor of the House. So our role is to give the House the alternative on voting on the bills separately or to vote on the package. And part of that, as I understand, it's going to be discussions with the Senate.
Mr. Chairman.
So what we're doing now is putting the bill together.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to clarify. So we are on the Eklund A10 amendment as amended.
That's right.
Okay, and as part, Mr. Chairman, as part of that A10 amendment as amended, we have already included that language from Section 5 of Representative Hausman's amendment, which specified the direction to the Commissioner of MMB to verify that it's CARES funding eligible.
That's my understanding. Representative Marks, as I might interpret that.
Mr. Chair and Representative Garofalo, that language was in the A12 amendment that Representative Eklund moved earlier and was adopted.
And that's what I was meaning, Representative Garofalo. We've been adopting that for each one of the bills.
So, Mr. Chairman, we had, and I'm trying to, my apologies, I'm just trying to track this. We had an oral amendment that was included that Representative Eklund moved. I thought I understood where that amendment was. If Mr. Marks, if you could just tell me where that fit in and where we're at in that process, the oral amendment that Representative Eklund offered.
Mr. Marks.
Mr. Chair, Representative Garofalo, there were two. In the original A10, he deleted the language on the sentence that starts on line 5.18 with no money and goes on 5.19 and 5.20. So that was deleted. And then in the A12 amendment, lines 1.3 through 1.5 were deleted. And they were deleted because they amended the language that I just referenced earlier that had already been deleted from the A10.
Okay. I don't know where we're at, Mr. Chairman, but Mr. Chairman, in the future, I know it takes a little bit longer. We can't be doing oral amendments. I'm sorry. I have 3 separate monitors here, and I'm trying to track it. I don't know where we're at. I don't know. Maybe other members of the committee know exactly what's going on right now. I know people are doing this with the best of intent, but if we've got to get these amendments packaged together so we can see how they're interacting. It's not a criticism of staff. It's not even a criticism of anyone. We just have to do better.
I am not a fan of oral amendments, but I did talk earlier, and being it was just a striking of basically the one sentence, I said that I would accept it.
But Mr. Chairman, there was also an oral amendment regarding federal language and
can be significant.
There was also an oral amendment regarding CARES language.
I'm sorry, we were talking over one another.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. My notes here, what I'm looking at here, is that there was an oral amendment involving the CARES language.
Mr. Chair, and this is Bill Marks, if I could clarify. Yes, there was, but that was attempting to, or that would have amended language that was already stricken from the bill. So it was essentially taking, the language that was orally deleted was attempting to amend the sentence that had previously been deleted from the bill. And it was basically kind of redundant language that we wanted to get out of there, clear up.
This is the amendment that actually came from our nonpartisan staff, if I recall. Is that correct, Mr. Marks?
Mr. Chair, that's correct.
And that's why, as an oral amendment, it seemed to be pretty simple, just striking of that sentence and source of the amendment. That's why I agreed to accept it. Otherwise, Representative Garofalo, the preference is that amendments be in writing. We are in a little different circumstance right now with people located in various locations and what have you. Okay, we have the amendment or the motion before us. Representative Eklund, would you care to renew your motion?
And Commissioner Chair, I did have my hand up.
Well, I don't see a hand. Who is this speaking?
Representative Cretia, and I did use the raise hand feature.
Oh, there we are. I found you. Yeah. Okay, Representative Cretia.
Okay, thank you. Representative, and to Mr. Chair and to the testifier, just a couple questions, not testifier, to the bill author. I have to ask Representative Eklund, knowing the intent of the border-to-border broadband is to first and foremost get to the unserved areas, those that have no access. Do you have confidence that the amendment that went on, the A11, actually keeps the integrity of that, or can you tell me how that has changed how the broadband funds will be distributed now?
Mr. Chair, Representative Cretia, I do have confidence that we will be fine with this, and after discussing with the Office of Broadband, and I believe Ms. Dickinson is on, if she can provide further clarity to your question.
Ms. Dickinson, are you on?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, identify for the record.
My name is Angie Dickinson. I am with the Office of Broadband Development at DEED.
And did you hear the question?
I believe the question was how we would be able to proceed with the grant round to provide funds to the unserved areas, and we would use the same process that we have in place today, with specifically limiting this, if it was this $10 million in funding, limiting those funds to areas that are unserved.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Cretia.
Thank you. Follow up. Ms. Dickinson, with all due respect, I'm not talking about the broadband border-to-border program. I think that program is still fine with the challenge language and all that. My worry is with the A11 and how we've now taken the dollars that are going to be directed from the $8 million to the education, and now it's 15. Do we have the same protections on there that we worked so hard for in the border-to-border that wouldn't allow for overbuilding in some areas and completely ignoring unserved areas of the state, which frankly, Representative Eklund, you represent a lot of that. We've been trying to get up into your northern regions. That's the area of concern. So to the bill author or the amendment author and to the testifier, Ms. Dickinson, do you have confidence
or do we have the ability to make sure those funds are administered using the same border-to-border policies and challenge procedures, not to overbuild areas and leave unserved areas alone?
Ms. Dickinson?
Mr. Chair, Representative, yes, we have plans that we would administer the program in the exact same way that we do today, using the same process, again, making sure that these funds were distributed and deployed to provide infrastructure in unserved areas of the state, and using our existing processes to prevent overbuilding.
Okay, and Mr. Chair, I'll just wrap it up. Is that okay, Mr. Chair?
Representative Grisha.
Thank you. And so, Representative Eklund, I'm trying to throw you a lifeline here. Ms. Dickinson, I understand what you're saying, and you're confining your remarks to the border-to-border program, but there is money that's appropriated that's going to work through the Department of Education. Representative Eklund, I'm telling you, as somebody who is a very big proponent of broadband and unserved, you need to look very closely at this to make sure we don't lose those gains and that money doesn't go to areas that are already overbuilt. I'm sharing that with you, and I hope you get a chance to look at that before this moves to the House floor.
Representative Eklund.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Krishaw, I appreciate your comments. In working on this bill with Senator Westrom and other staff, we've had plenty of discussions along that line, and I believe that we will not compromise the system in providing these grants to telemedicine and education.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, Representative Eklund, would you care to renew your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I renew my motion that the language contained in the A10 amendment as amended be included as Article 2 of the COVID-19 Economic Security Act.
Okay, any further discussion? I think this one will require a roll call vote. Ms. Sparkman? Being that we're in essence taking action on a bill.
Representative Carlson?
Aye.
Representative Olson?
Aye.
Representative Garofalo?
No.
Representative Albright excused. Representative Bernardi? Representative Davids excused. Representative Davney?
Aye.
Representative Jaskowski?
No.
Representative Eklund?
Aye.
Representative Hamilton?
No.
Representative Hansen?
Aye.
Representative Hausman?
Aye.
Representative Hertas?
No.
Representative Hornstein?
Aye.
Representative Krisha?
No.
Representative Liebling?
Aye.
Representative Lilly?
Aye.
Representative Long?
Aye.
Representative Mariani?
Aye.
Representative Marquardt?
Aye.
Representative Nelson?
Aye.
Representative Noor?
Aye.
Representative Pulowski? Representative Poppy?
Aye.
Representative Schumacher excused. Representative Scott? Representative Torkelson?
No.
Representative Vogel excused. Representative Wagenius?
Aye.
Representative Bernardi? And Representative Pulowski? I have 16 ayes and 7 nays.
Okay, the motion prevails. Let me ask a question. We've got